You good?
Mhm.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about energy management and how it's different from time management and similar. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can see a screen.
All right, cool. So I did a pumpkin theme since it's October and Halloween's on Friday. Um, but energy management is a little different from time management. So time is fixed. Everyone has the same amount of time in the day. Everyone gets 24 hours, um, but your energy throughout the day can fluctuate depending on what you focus on, as well as like how it's divided. So it could be used for as fuel, I'm going to call it, for focusing on work. It could be focusing on being creative or making something or motivating to do something else. And something that's not often talked about with time management is how you can manage your energy. Because you can have like your entire day set out in a like a perfect schedule, but if you just don't have like the, emotional bandwidth to really um handle it all, it can be quite taxing sometimes. Um, and so when you're managing your energy, it helps you avoid burnout. So it allows you to focus on things that need your focus right then and there versus like attacking everything all at once, which is an easy road to burnout, right? So, as I've said, so what is energy management? So it's really taking care of our internal battery, right? So that we can really try our best, try our hardest at whatever we do, regardless if it's like, doing the dishes or if it's, acing a test or driving somewhere. It could be anything, right? And it's really about knowing when you feel like alive the most, like what lifts you up, and also figuring out what your motivations are and what makes you keep going, and kind of making sure that you have enough of that. So um, there's four key energy sources we're going to talk about, which is physical, mental, emotional, and social. And so really our goal here is to align our habits with whenever we feel more energized. For some people, you might be a night owl, so you might get, all of your energy late at night, or there's some people who are like early birds who, wake up at 6 and, they're ready to attack the day, but then as the day goes on, you have a little bit of a cool down, right? And so we all have our each unique energy rhythm. Um, And you can kind of think of energy management as sort of a personal sustainability, meaning like how can we keep what we're doing afloat pretty much and avoiding burnout. And a lot of what I talk about in this um, presentation also deals with talks that I've done on uh, like boundary setting. It touches upon self care. It touches upon, my last one of thriving through uncertainty. And as you'll see, like all of these things are kind of like melding together because they're each important parts, right? So when we think about the four dimensions of the energy, of our energy, we can think of it as for physically, uh, sleep, and if we're getting enough of it or not enough of it, nutrition, what we're putting into our bodies, how often we're staying active. And then emotionally, how do I handle stress and connect with others, right? And that's a big piece. Mentally, it's how much we're focused or how little we're focused, what our mindset and our internal dialogue is, and if there's a lot of things going on internally. So like your cognitive load, you call it. And socially, do the relationships that we have, they could be, any, friendship, romantic partner, parents, siblings, professors, anybody. Are they relationships that energize us, charge our battery, or do they drain us? Is it like a black hole, sucking, the energy out of you? And all four of these dimensions really interact with each other, because if one starts to fall short, then you'll notice like other things falling short. So I know, like, if I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm not going to be able to handle stress well, and then my focus is going to be bad, and then I might not, so it all kind of feeds off of each other, if that makes sense. And so how we can recognize like energy leaks, or like when we feel like our energy is draining out of us. um Even when we're getting enough sleep, are we even tired when we wake up, right? Are we scrolling on, our phones until our eyes dry out, when we're supposed to be sleeping? Um, Saying yes to everything. Um, it can be hard to say no to people, but as we'll realize as we get older and as we develop more, no is a complete sentence, right? You can say no and have your own reasons, be your own reasons, right? It's okay to say no. And then also when we're realizing that we're um, leaking energy, we might be overthinking small things like, oh, someone, made a face at me, or, am I reading too much into this, or are they having a bad day? Whatever it could be, right? Or feeling detached and unmotivated. Um, it's normal to feel all these things, right? And it's not bad to feel these things, but we want to get to a place where we're, recognizing when this is happening, because oftentimes you're caught in the middle of just life in general. The semester could be anything, could be parenting, could be, you know, whatever, your job, could be anything. Um, and you don't realize when you're in the thick of it that, these things might be happening. So it's good to be cognizant of what is going on. So Benedict said, the fourth one is my comment leak. Yeah, I totally feel that. Yeah. So sleep is really the charging station for your brain. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not getting like at least 7 to 9 hours, that's like the appropriate amount of time people should be getting. I mean, some people might need less, some people might need more, right? Um, but it should be a regular thing if you can help it, right? Um, it's completely essential because it affects so many things. And having a consistent bedtime is better than, I don't know if you've ever heard of like sleep debt, like you haven't slept for so long, or like you're getting like 4 or 5 hours each night, and then you take one day and you're like, okay, I'm going to catch up on sleep tonight, and you end up sleeping like 12 hours, right? Or something like that. But it's not really like, it doesn't help you catch up. It just kind of makes you go to sleep later the next day, right? Uh, Elijah says sleep is a necessary vice. Yeah, that's definitely true. And so if you can help it, I know for myself, this is essential. Um, no caffeine after 3 p.m. Um, and limit your phone light before bed. So I don't know if anyone was here about my digital detox one, but I went into great length about how like the blue light affects your sleep schedule even after you've turned off your phone. It kind of activates um, that part of your brain that to stay awake, right? Okay. Um, so what are we fueling our bodies with? So as everyone knows, fuel is, or geez, food is energy, right? It's not just calories. Um, it's not just food, right? It's energy. It keeps us going. It keeps us, you know, regularly energized. It keeps us, on a good schedule. And so, one way to help this is to have steady energy, right? So, avoiding things like energy drinks, even though I can't speak to that because I had one today, but having protein, having complex carbs, because complex carbs take longer to break down. So, they give you more energy throughout the day. Um, and try not to skip meals. Um, I know it's easier said than done. Sometimes life just gets so fast and you forget, but it definitely has an effect on our focus and our mood. Because I don't know if any of you have ever taken a test on an empty stomach. You're like, oh shoot, I forgot to eat breakfast right before this exam, and then you're like, oh wow, I could have done better. Um, it's because your brain needs the nutrients, right? Um, and hydration is essential. Um, Drink a lot of water, definitely before caffeine, because caffeine will like dehydrate you. And so moving on to movement or activity, and this isn't like having a rigorous, workout regimen, right? It's just having these few moments here and there where we can stay a little bit active, right? Because it boosts our focus, it gets the endorphins going, and it really reduces stress. Being in nature, even walking in between classes, you kind of feel, even though it can be a slog if you have like 5 minutes in between class and you're trying to make it across campus, but even still moving like that has a positive effect. Um, and 10 minutes of stretching or walking really improves your alertness more than just relying on a cup of coffee, because after the caffeine wears out, you'll have a crash and then you'll want more. Um, so yeah. And so how can we manage this, right? Commutes, classes, some of us take the bus or we rely on the shuttle to get to different campuses, right? Or we carpool with other people or we have to wait for other people. Um, and that coupled with classes and jobs, it can drain your stamina quite quick. And so, in order to ameliorate this, is to use this energy snacks, right? There are these short, intentional breaks that you make after you do something, before you do something, that can really help center you, right? They can really help kind of put things back into perspective, even, just for a few minutes, right? So it could be music, it could be breathing, it could be drinking water, it could be journaling, could be a ton of things. And so when we have this crash zone, right, we're in the midst of midterms and finals coming up and holidays and all this stuff. So we, get sucked up into that world of like, oh, it's like a constant uphill thing. And it's a long stretch without much rest. We kind of have to put the brakes on that and be like, oh, in order to avoid geez, in order to avoid burnout, um, let's just take a break for a sec, right? Let's take a break for 10, 15, 30 minutes, however long you need to get back to where you need to go, right? And this little cat is definitely locked in. So now moving on to mental energy. And so focus is is a big part of everything. You know, you could be focusing on this, you could be focusing on homework, you could be focusing on a lot of other stuff. And so in order to mitigate distractions, which are the number one drain on like mental energy, like if you get a notification on your phone, you're working on something, and then next thing you know, 20 minutes have passed, and you're scrolling and you're like, oh wow. um because it splits your focus. Or even if you just have like, I use this, like early on in my academic career, I would have Netflix on while I'm doing homework in my bed. And I realized after a certain amount of time, like, this is a very expensive uh, Netflix subscription I have. Like, if I'm paying, for college, but I'm just watching Netflix, like, I'm not doing myself any favors, right? So, changing your space, like either working at a desk or working at, dining room table or working at school, um, really helps, because, we have a limited attention currency, right? There's only so many things that we can focus on at once, where it just becomes like 10% of each thing that we're focusing on, right? Rather than 100% on one thing, if that makes sense. Um, and so you can have like focus blocks where you do 25 minutes on and then 5 minutes off, like 25 minutes doing something and then 5 minutes off. Um, I'll go more into that a little later. Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you, Afra. Um, Sometimes it's the location, sometimes it's just, you kind of feel more in the mood. Like if I'm dressed in pajamas under the covers in my bed and I have my laptop and I'm watching something, I'm kind of not in like the right mind frame. And this is just for me, but I'm kind of not in the right environment for that, right? But if I was like at a desk with everything I needed, you know, I would be more inclined to use my time wisely like that. Um, so we can have some mental clutter and decision fatigue. Does anyone want to take a crack at what decision fatigue is, or um, what is that term called? But
I
yeah.
think this decision fatigue would be something like when you can't decide on what you want to do,
Mhm.
and you would on another day, if you had gotten all of your energy and food and all that, that decision would have been more clear. So on a day where you haven't gotten your sleep and all that, you start to have decision fatigue when it comes to decisions that would have been simple to make, or something that would have been like, oh, I know I have to do that, but in that moment it's taking up more time than it should.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on your head. Thank you. Um, and so what Offer was going off of, like these things can like eat up our brain power, right? They can eat up like things that we know we should be doing, but we can't quite figure out how we can get started. And often taking the first step is the hardest part, right? Because I don't know if you guys have had like a big paper to do. You're like, I don't know how I can get started. But once you do get started, it kind of like it takes over, right? You're like, oh, I'm getting into a groove. These pages are just flying by. Um, and so one thing we can do to help with this is to create like a default per se to start your day. So you can have like a similar breakfast or like a similar study spot, things like this that, kind of take the guesswork out of it so that we can like simplify our days, um, so that we can not spend our focus and our energy on the small things and kind of save it for the big things that are going on, right? And so studying major um, relevance, um, study smarter, not harder. Um, we can do is break large tasks into chunks. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Pomodoro method. It's like a studying method that I think it's like 25-minute chunks, and you take a break and then you go back to it and then you take a break and then you switch subjects. Um, it's very helpful. I use it all the time for my classes. Um, and like I was saying before, with your natural energy rhythm, about some people being, night owls and some people being, super early birds, match your study time with that, right? Because if I know I'm not a night owl, I'm not going to start studying at 11 o'clock, right? I'm going to want to be in bed, honestly. But if you do it in the morning when it suits you, that would be, you know, the best. And so when we're going through studying and we're doing different topics and doing different things, have a reset so that you can come full circle and center yourself and essentially reset. I know I said it already, but reset your brain so that you can stay mentally fresh, right? Stay fresh mentally. Um, and do what works for you, right? This isn't a one size fits all sort of thing. If your thing is going outside, that's great. But if someone else's is, playing with their dogs or playing a few minutes of video games or, you know, doing something, right? Then go with it, right? Then do what works for you. And I know I've talked about this before with different topics, but it comes up again and again. Um, it's having this growth mindset, right? Having saying I'm bad at this kind of like tells ourselves that, oh wow, like I am bad at this. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep saying you're bad at it, then you're more likely to be, to not trust yourself and not try as hard. But if you kind of switch it a little bit in your head and be like, instead of I'm bad at this, I'm learning this. And that way, when you do have setbacks, you're like, oh, that's okay. I'm, you know, not expected to be as proficient as someone who's been doing this for 10 years. Um, like if you're learning a new subject or if you're learning a new instrument, you're not going to be a prodigy in, 2 days. Um, it's okay to be, a novice. Everyone starts somewhere. I know it's cliche, but I think it's the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And we can, apply that to so many things, right? And it's not about perfection, right? It's about progress. Are we making this incremental progress with something, whether it's a subject, whether it's a skill or a hobby or whatever it is? Um, it's about just one, enjoying it or getting something out of it, and two, seeing that each mistake is an opportunity to get better after it, right? And if things aren't getting better, then it's okay to switch it, right? It's okay to tweak your approach to something, right? So when we are learning something new or doing something, it's good to celebrate your efforts, right? You pass a milestone, you can pat yourself on the back, get a sweet treat somewhere, do something to say to yourself, right? Because we're talking to ourselves. I'm proud of you. You did this. It was hard. Not everyone could do this, or whatever. Um, because it builds this like internal endurance and resiliency for when other big projects come up or other challenges come up. So moving on to emotional energy. So there's things that drain our battery and there's things that fuel our battery. Um, and so like if I'm really not enjoying doing something, I'm not going to feel particularly energized. But if I'm doing something I love, I'm going to feel energized. It's straightforward like that. So when we know we're feeling drained, or we might not even know it at first, right? So we could be thinking of comparing ourselves to others. We could be thinking negatively. We could have some sort of unresolved conflict with someone or something. But if you're getting fueled by something, you might be feeling some gratitude or humor or, purpose or connection or whatever positive thing it may be. And what you focus on emotionally amplifies and multiplies, right? So stress can come in good and bad forms, right? I'm sure we all know that there are certain things like if we're planning for a big trip, it's a very positive thing, but we have to think about logistics, you got to think about packing, you got to think about finances. And overall, it's a positive thing that is kind of giving you stress, if that makes sense. And there's also negative stuff. It could be, something happened or a loved one passed, or it could be anything, right? Chronic stress will almost always lead to burnout. If you're stressed, and then you do nothing to sort of remedy the situation in between by having like these breaks and being able to center yourself, you're going to lead to burnout in the end, right? Because it's this constant uphill battle that you're facing. So you can have a stress reset, like I've said. Um, and it could be whatever works for you. It could be deep breaths, it could be short walks, it could be, music, listening or playing or going to see music, journaling, it could be anything, whatever works for you. The goal is to really balance your nervous system. So, um, being able to emotionally regulate yourself is very important when you're doing anything. It doesn't just have to apply to school. It applies to every facet of our lives. So, like I've mentioned before about self-talk, our inner dialogue is incredibly important in how we speak to ourselves and how it drives our motivation and how we may see ourselves. um, if your internal dialogue is saying, I can't do this, I can't do this, you can repeat some mantras. You kind of have to like trick your brain into thinking like, oh yeah, I can do these things, I can, right? And practice this realistic optimism, right? Or where you're honest about how things are going, right? Like being pragmatic, but you're also hopeful. You hope for the best. You hope for the best outcome, right? And you turn I have to into I get to do this thing, right? Or if you have some sort of obligation, you're like, oh, well, you know, I don't really feel like doing this. You're like, it could be a chance to meet someone new. It could be a chance to learn a new skill. Um, it shifts your emotional state and really puts things into realistic terms in what you could gain by doing it, right? Or how you might feel afterwards. So, like I said before about in my boundaries leadership lunch, I think that was like a month ago now, maybe more. Saying no is self care. It's not selfishness or a negative form of selfishness. It's a positive form of selfishness because selfishness isn't inherently bad, even though we might think it is. It just means doing things for yourself, right? And if you don't want to do something, you have every right to say no, right? And so when you do say yes to stuff, or you're saying yes to every everything, like, oh, can you do this? But really you can't because you already have a lot on your plate as it is. Every yes costs energy, right? And so it's good if we spend it intentionally, right? If we, use our yeses like an allotted amount that we have, you can think of it in terms of that or differently. Um, but it helps you establish boundaries with people, right? It helps you establish boundaries with technology, with schedules, and keeping your energy in like a very stable, sort of level, right? It's very important to set boundaries. Now we're going on to social and relational energy. And as we've talked about before, batteries. So in terms of relationships, could be anything, could be platonic, romantic, with friends, with professors, bosses, coworkers, could be anything. Some people can recharge your battery, right? Like this is doing on the screen here, or they can drain your battery, right? And it can be very, difficult, you know. Um, so it's good to spend time with people who uplift and inspire you and have, things in common with you and don't, beat you down, emotionally, right? People who are going to, bring out the best in you, right? Because everyone feeds off of each other, uh, energy wise, right? And so it's good to limit your time with people who drain your battery because otherwise it's just it can affect your mood completely. And so going off of that point, having a community that lowers your stress and boosts your motivation, right? Because having a community is not just for in times of crisis or near crisis or burnout. It's for all the time, right? It's for when we're feeling great, it's for when we're feeling good, when we're feeling bad, it's for every time, right? And so these things on campus, these different resources can be built-in energy boosters, right? So having a study group or having, an advisor that you're close to and can talk about your future and can talk about, um, other things. Um, Clubs, if you're part of a club, that would be, you know, you're all there for a common goal. You're all there for a common mission to do something, right? And this is also a subtle plug for the student engagement office as well. But um, and what I really want to reiterate is you don't have to do everything on your own, right? You don't have to, be solo throughout all this because collaboration, it kind of pulls everything together, everybody together, and it really saves your energy, saves everyone's energy, right? And so this is something that I like to do. It's basically a an inventory list of questions you can ask yourself of basically how you're feeling. Like, what gave me energy today? What drained my energy today? And then what can I do differently tomorrow to make sure I you know keep feeling energized, right? And B, maybe kind of take out a little bit of the draining part, right? Because not every situation that we're going to be in is um is going to be like we like some situations are necessary, right? Like some conversations are hard that we need to have, right? So self-awareness is really being in tune with yourself, having those questions that you can ask yourself, and be cognizant of, um, is really the control center of how we use and conserve our energy, right? Mhm. So rest and recovery, equally important parts of retaining energy and recovering from it. So if you're just resting, you're sleeping or you're lounging or, but if you're recovering, that's a little different, right? There's a situation for both, right? You know, you could be doing something like reading or being in nature, having a creative hobby, or doing anything that kind of like builds you up, you know, could be alone, could be with separate people. Um, and both have their benefits. Like if you're resting, you need that, right? You need to have enough sleep. And if you're recovering, it might not be time for sleep, or you might not be in the right, you know, place to sleep. Um, so doing something restorative is just as good, right? Because you're doing something that makes you feel good intentionally, right? And so they both have their benefits. And I already talked about this. And so I would like to ask you all, if you guys just want to put, or if you want to put in the chat, what does your energy routine look like? It doesn't have to be much, but if you would like to share, I would love to hear from you. Not existing. I feel that, Delia.
I feel like I don't get enough sleep, or some
Mhm.
days I get too much sleep, so my energy is always like shifting. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like one of the biggest things for me is sleep, because everything does come back to sleep and I can't stop talking about it enough. Like, and it's hard because you have to build consistency, and it's not just motivation. Like, you can have motivation any day and you're like, okay, I have motivation, but like that like high motivation you get, it like makes you crash at the at the end of the day, and it's really about discipline
Mhm.
and consistency. So for me, it's
Yeah.
sleep, but I have been getting better at eating consistently throughout the day, because I only used to eat once. I used to eat one meal in the entire day, but like that one meal was like so much, it would fill me up.
Mhm.
So I have been getting better at like having breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. And yeah,
That's good.
and drinking more water. Water.
Yeah.
Like it's the simple things like water, sleep, food. Like you would think
Mhm.
it's like other things like having a better like routine, or like school, or like all that other stuff, or like, having like going to the gym or something, but like no, it's really like food, sleep, and water. The
Mm.
human basic of living.
Yeah. I feel you. Benedict says, well, overthinking, but usually and collaboration with others and energized by people I love does it. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all for sharing. Um, thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, um, how do I?
this was the second last meeting and the final is the